Darcy Kuemper to the Washington Capitals. They've totally overhauled their goaltending now, moving on from Vanacek, letting Samsonov walk, and they bring in the Stanley Cup champion. What do you think of that decision if it happens?
There's no more hoping going on in Washington. You're bringing in the Stanley Cup winning goaltender in Darcy Kuemper, who was from, let's say, American Thanksgiving. So late November, was one of the top 5, top 10 goalies in the league this year by all metrics. Okay. And it wasn't just that Colorado was that good in front of him. You're looking at your goals saved above expected, above average, all those things. Now, what makes it look a little different is that in playoff time, Kuemper just had to be alive more or less, man. Like he had a couple games. Game 4 was phenomenal in the finals. Okay. But like they just needed decent goaltending in Colorado. And I think it kind of overshadowed that Kuemper is a really good goaltender. And he was battling pretty serious eye injury. I mean, he was going to an ophthalmologist like every day, apparently. We didn't know about this until afterwards. So I think in Kuemper, you're getting a top 15, top 10 goaltender in the league for Washington. And that club hasn't gotten good goaltending. They haven't had consistent goaltending. Kuemper's been pretty consistent. And I think that's going to overhaul. He's been fairly durable. That's a little bit of a concern for me. So we got to see who they bring on board as their secondary. But
no, and I'm just curious quickly with Washington, assuming that Darcy Kuemper does get confirmed there at some point. I think it's a good, safe, stable play for a team that, hasn't, its goaltending has been in a bit of a state of flux. But that whole team now, there's so much uncertainty surrounding Nicholas Backstrom and his hips and his ability to come back and play. And have known Nick a long time and such an important part of that team. He's sort of if we think of Crosby and Malkin in Pittsburgh and Ovechkin and Backstrom in Washington, for me, Backstrom is a Hall of Fame player, so critical to what that organization has achieved. But they are in a bit of a state of flux. They're not that young. You've got TJ Oshie there. You've got players who've gone through a lot of injuries. The back end is, I just don't know where it's at in terms of where this team is headed. What is the challenge? I mean, we talk about Pittsburgh and the decisions on Malkin and Letang. What does that mean for that team moving forward? The Penguins have a lot better, deeper supporting cast than the Caps do right now. And I think that's an issue, even though, they let that series in the first round against Florida get away from them. I just don't know where they're at in terms of their evolution. Never count out a team with Alex Ovechkin. I get that, but boy, there are some difficult days ahead, I think, for the Washington Capitals. And even if Darcy Kuemper comes in and stabilizes the goaltending, there are still a lot of questions for me about just exactly how Brian McClellan is going to sort of fit together, plug some of the holes in that lineup.
Mike, now that we know officially what the deals are for Campbell and Kuemper, both 5 years, one is an even $5 million, the other is 5.25. Is there one you significantly like more than the other?
Not really. I'm just kind of surprised that Kuemper didn't hit the $6 million mark. To me, that's when you look at Jordan Binnington's deal, that seemed like something of the benchmark for me. And especially considering that the Avalanche were willing to let him go. Yeah, if they could have had him at 5.25 compared to what they gave to Georgiev at, I believe, 3.8, like it's not a big swing. And I understand that might be the difference between having a Darren Helm in your lineup or not. And you're also trying to get a little bit younger there. But 5 years for both of these goalies is reasonable. At 31 years old for Kuemper, I believe, and Campbell at 30, like you're going to get them through their prime. This isn't like players where you think 26 to 32 or 23 to 30 is really their best window. For goalies, it's in their 30s. I firmly believe it. You see a goalie at his best by his late 20s and early 30s. So, for both of these goaltenders, I think you're going to get at minimum 3 solid years out of them before you might see any decline. And I'd be surprised if you really saw any decline in terms of their game. So, I think they both fit within the structure the teams are headed to. I wonder what Kuemper might have had available, in terms of teams. That's really all I kind of question is like, which of these teams did they really have to choose from? What was the pecking order? What are we going to find out later as to who was really the target? Was it Fleury? Was it Kuemper? Was it Campbell? I'm fascinated to learn that after the fact, because to me, they're almost kind of interchangeable, but Kemper's got the resume.
All right, let's bring back in Pete Blackburn for one last check-in, and it's been an interesting day. The most recent news that we've officially got, Pete, is that Darcy Kuemper is going to the Washington Capitals. 5 years, 5.25 is the AAV there. What do you think of what Brian McClellan has done between the pipes in Washington?
I really don't know if Darcy Kuemper makes that team all that much better. And given where he's at in terms of age, I don't know if I'm rushing to hand out a 5-year deal, especially after what we just saw from him in the playoffs. I know that he won the Stanley Cup, but the Avs kind of won the Stanley Cup despite him, not because of him. And so, that's an interesting choice for Washington, given where they are as a team. And I don't necessarily know if I love it. I know Kemper's numbers have been pretty good over the past several years, but I don't buy him as sort of a difference maker. And I don't know if there's a guy like that exists out there right now for Washington, but it's a bit of a gamble and one that could look pretty bad, I think, in a few years.